Karolyn Grimes is an actress best known for her role as Zuzu Bailey in the classic 1946 film It's a Wonderful Life. And she's on the line with us here. How are you today?
Oh, I'm just really fine. Got a little touch of a cold, but
no.
I'll get over it.
Yes. Unfortunately, Jimmy Stewart won't be around to make you feel better this time.
Darn.
Yeah. Now, Zuzu Bailey is one of the most memorable names in film, isn't it?
I believe so. If nothing else, just Zuzu, because everybody seems to connect with the film and flowers and the little girl and all. It just conjures up a lot of good stuff.
Where did that name actually come from?
There was a product made around the early 1900s, and it was called Zuzu's Ginger Snaps. It was a cookie. And so if you remember when George runs up the stairs when he's so happy to be back home and he says hi to his kids, I run out my bedroom door and I say, Daddy, Daddy. And he says, Zuzu, my little ginger snap. So I guess I was named after a cookie.
Yeah. And what was it like working with Jimmy Stewart and being on the set with other people like Frank Capra and Donna Reed?
Well, I was 6 years old and I really didn't know they were any different than any other actor I'd been with or a director. Everybody was all the same. And my mother and father made it a huge issue that I would never know what a star was or that they were stars.
Yeah.
So I had no idea. I just thought they were my friends and it was my job. And so I didn't realize really who they were. In fact, it took me a long, many years before I figured out anything about that film.
Yeah. Well, it was not until the 80s that you actually saw it for the first time, right?
That's right. 1980. It was the first time I ever saw the film.
And how did that actually happen?
I kept getting people, reporters knocking on my door, and I lived out in the country, and they said, were you the little girl that played in the movie? And I said, well, yeah. And so they said, can we have an interview? And I thought, well, okay. So I went to the basement and drug up all my memorabilia so we could have an interview. And doggone, every week it just seemed to keep happening again and again. And I thought, what in the world is going on? So eventually I started getting fan mail.
Wow.
And I thought, this is weird. So I said, I think I'd better sit down and watch this movie. So I did.
And what did you think of it? What were your first impressions?
Well, of course, I did the tears and the happiness, and I did the whole gamut of the roller coaster of emotions. And I realized that this was a masterpiece, that it really helped people, and it could touch lives. Yeah. And I really felt like it was a tool that could be used in many positive ways. And I knew then that I had to take up the cause. And so I made that possible. I had to wait about 10 years till my kids were gone, but I made it my life now to follow that course wherever it takes me.
When did you realize you were part of something special? I mean, was it right then when you first saw it, or did you kind of already know, or was it much later?
Right when I saw it, I knew I was blessed and chosen, because there were 4 kids in the movie, Bailey kids, and Zuzu is the one they remember. Yeah. Zuzu is the one who had the biggest line at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Teacher says, every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings. And that was huge. So I knew that I had a responsibility, and I've followed that thinking ever since that time.
Even if they've not seen the film, everybody knows that line, don't they?
Yes, they do. A lot of times people just catch bits and pieces of the film because they don't want to sit down and watch the whole thing, or maybe they're cooking, Christmas dinner while it's on or whatever. But once they sit down and watch the whole thing, it touches their hearts and makes a difference in their lives.
Yeah. And is it true that you still have the bell from the tree, which ended up in you saying that famous line?
No. I never said I had the bell. We've tried to find that bell, but we've never been able to find it. We don't have any idea. And it was made by the Bevan Bell Company, which is still in operation. And they made the bell on the tree, but
Wow.
No one knows where it is. At one point, Bozo the Clown said he had it, but he didn't.
And when you first saw the film, did all the memories of filming it come flooding back to you?
No, I was more involved in the story.
Yeah.
That didn't happen until I started watching it kind of rote. Then I would let myself remember, and then I would feel tags in my memory that, oh yeah, I remember that or whatever. But when I first watched the movie, I was mesmerized by the film, and I didn't think about anything else but the story.
Yeah. And how many times do you think you've seen it now?
Maybe it's 800.
Wow. Do you ever get sick of it?
No, never. Never get sick of it. I could watch it over and over again because it's, always see something different. And Frank Capra was a genius at putting special meanings throughout the film, and he did. And so I'm always catching something a little different every time I watch it. There's a skull on Mr. Potter's desk when he offers George a job.
Yeah.
And that skull faces Mr. Potter. There's a heavy chain on the back of it that faces George.
Oh.
So what Capra's saying is if George takes the job, he'll be chained to Mr. Skullduggery Potter the rest of his life.
Wow.
There are messages and meanings throughout that movie. So many.
There's so many things that you wouldn't notice the first time you see it, and they've colorized it now, haven't they? Are these things easier to spot when the film's in color?
Very much so. Very much so. You notice a lot of things in the background that you've never seen before.
Yeah.
And you just see things like where George is in his father's office, his new office, so to speak, when he goes out to talk to the people about the run on the bank.
Yeah.
Before he goes out of the office, he stops a moment and he looks up at the portrait of his father. And underneath it, there's a needlepoint that says, all you can take with you is that which you've given away.
Yeah.
And then he walks out and he gives all his honeymoon money to the people.
And that's a great scene. Do you remember how you actually got involved with It's a Wonderful Life in the first place?
Well, I'd already done 4 movies. I had an agent, and she was the agent for all the kids in Hollywood, pretty much. And so they do a casting call. I mean, they tell her what they want, and then she sends who she thinks would be good from her stable to the interviews. Back then, they didn't have auditions. They had interviews.
Yeah.
And Capra was a perfectionist, and so he chose every single person that was in that movie, even the extras. He handpicked them all. He was really a perfectionist. So he was in the casting room, and he handpicked me for the part, which I thought was pretty great.
Yeah. These days, do you kind of think you were very lucky to have been chosen?
Yes, I do. I think I was very lucky. Actually, I was in the waiting room and in the outer office of the casting office, and there were 5 other little girls there, about 5, 6, I don't know. And one of the mothers, quote, accidentally spilled coffee on my dress.
Oh, no.
And I think she thought that perhaps it would throw me off because maybe, it would bother me. But, it didn't bother me at all. I walked in there with a dirty dress and I had something to talk about. And I didn't realize that it was a purposeful thing until I walked out of the casting office and into the parking lot, and my mother was talking to another mother, and I heard them discuss it, and they said they didn't think it was an accident, that the mother had done it on purpose to throw me off. I had no clue until I heard them talking about it.
Yeah.
So I learned.
And how long did your job on the film actually last? How long were you filming for?
2 weeks. We filmed 2 weeks in the July part, which was hot. And that's when we all filmed the 2 weeks.
It must have been weird filming a Christmas film in July, which is pretty normal. But as a child, did you find that unusual?
No, I didn't, because I had been in other movies where they had Christmas trees. It didn't matter. I knew it was all play pretend, and it was just an act, and it was a story, and I didn't think anything about that at all.
And we talked about what it was like to work with Jimmy Stewart, and in a way, your two characters, Zuzu Bailey and George Bailey, are kind of reliant or dependent on each other, because George confides in Zuzu when he's on the verge of a breakdown and he comes up to check on you. He's maybe a little bit softer, but also you're dependent on him to fix the petals and all that.
He shuts the door to the world, and he comes in and he just turns his attention and love on me. And I think that was a huge moment in the scheme of things. And I think it showed a closeness of a father and a daughter.
Yeah.
But it also showed that I knew, because I'm looking right at him when he fixes the pedals and he puts the pedal in his pocket. I see him do it. And you don't take a scene just once, you take it over and over again. And Capra left that in there where I'm perfectly watching him put the pedal in his pocket. But I think that what he wanted to say was that I knew my daddy wasn't perfect, but I loved him very much. And I think that was the underlying, kind of message that carried with him, because those pedals went with him everywhere. Yeah. Zuzu's pedal.
Yeah.
He looks for Zuzu's pedal. He gets in Ernie's taxi and he says, "Take me home, Ernie. Zuzu's sick." And, Zuzu is throughout the film, and her pedals are too.
Yeah.
So it's very meaningful that Capra put that line of thinking throughout the film.
They're such an important part of the film. I mean, they're how they know that he's back in the real world. I think you've said before that they get more screen time than you did.
Yeah, they do. They do. And so, he holds him up and he knows that he's back. So Zuzu is kind of the integral part throughout that unborn sequence. And it's a meaningful thing when he finds those pedals in his pocket and he knows that he's returned to his life.
Yeah. Now, what would you say is your favourite scene from the movie?
My favourite scene is probably the scene at the end of the movie, where I say every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings. But it's also, more than that, I like the scene where George is on the bridge and he wants to come back. And he's got his hands folded and he's praying to God to let him come back. And he says, please, God, I want to live again.
Yeah.
And when he says the word God, it starts to snow. So that indicates he's back right away.
Yeah.
And he's learned what's really important in life, and that's faith, family, and friends, it's a big deal.
It's interesting because the film wasn't initially a hit. It was a box office fail, and then over the years, it's became a classic, probably the most classic Christmas film of all time. What do you think the secret to its everlasting appeal is?
Well, because it applies to today, to yesterday, to tomorrow, and people can identify with George and all the things that he went through. We go through those things in this lifetime. We did in last lifetimes. We've been doing this for years. But to see someone actually go through it and all the things that he suffers, and then in the end you see what a gift life really is and how we can make a difference and make it a better life for ourselves and for other people. That's a tricky thing, and Capra pulled it off. And it's, the people weren't ready for it when it came out, because they were all up in, the war was over, and that's what they were excited about, was after the war. They didn't want to watch a movie that was about a man who was going to commit suicide. It was a dark film, and they didn't want that. And it wasn't released right. It wasn't released until December the 20th at the Globe Theater in New York, which is after Christmas, so it really couldn't be the Christmas movie. So it just kind of died, and they didn't renew the copyright. And then when they did, when they didn't renew it and the public found that movie, wow, it's been going gangbusters ever since.
And because it has no copyright, does that mean that nobody really has profited from its success?
Back in the early 70s, that was true, but that's no longer true. through Aaron Spellman figured out that he could buy the Dmitri Tiomkin estate, who did the music for It's a Wonderful Life. He could buy his estate, and it had the music in it. So he could claim that he owned the rights to the film because of the music. You couldn't do the film without the music. So from then on, it passed to Republic Studios and to Lionsgate and all kinds of places, and now Paramount has it. So they have the right because of that situation.
What would you say the overall message behind It's a Wonderful Life is?
Oh, I think it's that each man's life touches another, and we all make a difference, and we can all make choices, and we don't realize how much of a difference we really make.
Do you think that many of us make the same difference as George Bailey? Because he's somebody that, if he was never born, as we know, many people would be dead or homeless. Do you think that that could be the case for some of us?
Yes, I do. I truly do. I believe that's the truth. I think that we all touch each other's lives. If we are on a positive note, that the lives are touched in a positive way, it's a really good thing. If there's bad people in this world and they touch lives in a very negative way, that carries forth too. But It's a Wonderful Life gives you hope, because there are people who do touch lives in a positive way. And when you realize that you have that opportunity to change lives and to touch lives, well, then it's a wonderful reward. I mean, I'm Zuzu, so I touch people's lives. People tell me their problems. They tell me so many things. They tell me they've been on the bridge, all these things. And I have the opportunity to speak to them and show them that the movie is such a positive, uplifting experience, that it really makes a difference. And, I think that's a real blessing.
Yeah. Now, you've actually written a cookbook. Where did that idea come from?
My friend, Franklin DeHanas, and I went to Michigan, where he lived, and did a lot of appearances and gigs, and he'd bring me in. And one day we were sitting around his kitchen, and he said, I think that this dish I just fixed turned into a pot or stew. Because it kind of burnt and it wasn't very good. And so we got to talking about it, and we thought, well, it would be fun to maybe share some of our recipes and some of the stories of It's a Wonderful Life, and the actors and all the situations that happened. And so the cookbook was born. And so we did it, and then last December we came out with the anniversary edition, and it's just been wonderful. We added a lot more information about the people in the movie, the story, and all kinds of things like that. So it's been a real blessing for a lot of people in a lot of ways, and it's a really fun cookbook.
Are there any Zuzu ginger snaps recipes in the cookbook?
There sure is.
Great. How are you spending Christmas this year? I imagine this is a very busy time of year for you.
I'm on the road almost the whole time. I come home about a week before Christmas, and then I'm done for the year, and it's quite wonderful, actually.
Do you like being on the road?
I do. I really enjoy meeting the people and sharing the information from this movie that I love so very much.
Yeah. Many of the other children actors from It's a Wonderful Life are still with us, of course, and you're still in touch with them and do events with them, things like that sometimes. How often would you say you do things with them?
About twice a year.
Wow.
We're getting a little long in the tooth,
Yeah. Well, what else is coming up for you? Have you got any more exciting appearances, projects, more cookbooks?
No, I'm kind of writing this one out because it's still the 75th anniversary of the film this year. So I'm just kind of writing in that. And what I do now is I'm on the road and I do various appearances. And, of course, we have an It's a Wonderful Life museum in Seneca Falls, New York. And so that I do the festival every year. And that's coming up in a couple weeks. And so it's a huge event. And it's a lot of fun, and it's all about the film.
Yeah, excellent. Well, where are we able to keep up to date with you? Because you've got a website, don't you?
Yes, I do. Zuzu.net. It's in the process of getting revamped, but it is, and so I'm really excited about that. But you can go there and find my appearances and just about any information you need.
Excellent. Well, many thanks for talking to us today. It's been great to have you on the show, and have a great Christmas.
Oh, thank you very much. And you do the same. I'm always thrilled when I get to come to the UK or any part of that area because they love the movie so much, too. And that just makes my heart sing.